from an errand I had to go to. I apologize, I'm a few minutes late for opening up the conversation today. But it always reminds me of appointments that we make, and sometimes people who had made appointments would be a few minutes late. Sometimes I would be, but we always are happy to see each other. I'm happy that you're here. I'm happy that I made it, and welcome to the afternoon Pastor's Chat. I'm Pastor Lou Kilgore. I am pastor here at the High Mountain Presbyterian Church. And this is your seat here. It's a chance for you to use your imagination to put yourself in this chair. And let's engage in a little dialogue or a monologue that you do on your side and the one I do on my side. I'm not sure whether you sit quietly or whether you talk to me and like I talk to you and then assume. I suppose the one basis of our dialogue has always been this question: how are you? And what I mean by that is, how are you faring in this day? The sun came up, the sun goes down, and things happen in the course of a day, and sometimes it leaves us better and sometimes it leaves us worse. I'm always curious to know how I'm doing. How am I taking today? How is it landing in my life? And how are you? The drama, I guess, of our life as a people on this planet continues to... let me back up. When I was in high school and going through college, there were conversations about how the world was changing. And there was a discovery that the world was not as big as we thought that it was. There were all kinds of illustrations of that. Archaeologists and geologists were telling us that we are connected around the earth because we all stand on the same rock. And there was, I remember still someone saying that, someone could drop a fork on the island of Great Britain, and it was possible, theoretically, that the reverberations of that fork dropping and hitting the ground in Great Britain could cause, ultimately, a vibration to travel to California or to the Appalachian Mountains and therefore set off an earthquake. Little things all the way over there can have big impacts over here. And it was that kind of growing awareness that the world is still huge. The earth is big compared to us. What are we? Just in a little boat here, and the ocean is so big. But that the world is just as big as a backyard for us. There's no luxury anymore, if you want to, of thinking that somehow the world is so big that it can just consume or absorb all the consequences of my individual living, and that it won't matter. That what happens in my backyard stays in my backyard. It's been years as this expanding awareness has come to us. The world is intricately interconnected. And what happens in my backyard affects not just your backyard here, but our backyards in general. The world is a small neighborhood. I often tell the story of my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather, who they were farmers. They had immigrated here from first Ireland, then Scotland, and then to the ports of Baltimore in Pennsylvania. And then they migrated together as immigrant families and settled on some places of eastern Pennsylvania that were not populated yet. They were still owned by charter companies, and they staked their land. And they became farmers. It's what they did where they were, but the farming here was different. And they were in I don't know, they were in God's valley. Some of the towns are called paradise. You know, it was beautiful, rolling hills. Yes, they had to cut trees to clear land to farm, but they felt like they had arrived in heaven. The soil was rich and able to produce tremendous crops, and so they grew, and their farms were good. But one of the things that was a part of their mindset, which I became aware of, was that on all these farms there were streams, rolling hills. At the bottom of the roll there were streams, and the streams flowed on, right? And because of this mindset that, you know, this is my corner of the world and I don't affect anybody, they would develop rubbish, garbage, trash. And at the time, there was no, in the rural country of Pennsylvania, there was no garbage collection. That was something you did in the city. In the country where I was 10, then 12, 15, 16, and older, we got rid of the trash the old-fashioned way. We went to the ravine, we went to the place where the land went down. It was too steep to farm, and we took wagons, sometimes pulled by tractors, sometimes pulled by horses once in a while, but not very often at my age. And we took the garbage. We would do it like once a month. We'd gather up all the garbage, and some of it was cans of insecticide that were empty. Some of it was plastic that had wrapped things. Some of it was old wood from buildings that we had torn down. And we would back the truck or the wagon up to the top of the ravine, and we just pushed it off. We just pushed it off. We made dumps, as we called them. They were dumps. And as children, it was kind of fun to explore the dump because you could do scavenger hunting in the dumps. I don't think of my grandmother and grandfather as bad people. Their awareness of the world and of the interconnectedness, of the possibility of the pollution of that stream at the bottom of the ravine, which would then flow on to the neighbor's property and have added to it the pollution of their unwanted things, that it would accumulate and that it would actually get to the ocean and kill fish and all kinds of wildlife. There was no awareness of that level of how small and interconnected the world was. Now, I'm saying all of this in advance of reminding you that we are in the season now officially of Epiphany. The Feast of the Three Kings has come and gone, and it means that the wise ones from the far east have made their journey. They have arrived. They have followed a star, a light that was to guide them to see things they never saw before. Epiphany celebrates an openness of mind, an openness to see things that you've not been able to see before. And it's not just a one-time event. It's a continuing way of living, to be welcoming epiphanies. As I often said, epiphany translates aha. It's like a discovery. It's not good or bad. It's just, there it is. There it is. So in my grandfather's period of time of farming, he did not have the awareness. He just didn't have the awareness of the interconnectedness of a stream flowing, of the chemicals that were in insecticide cans, and the problems of accumulations of large piles of refuge. He didn't have it. In the period of time since then, I am slow to learn this, but I am aware now. I've traveled around the world, and I'm aware. There has to be a whole world integrated plan for what to do with garbage, with what to do with what we discard. Because if we don't have a plan, you know, I think it's been discontinued now, but many cities didn't know what to do with their garbage, so they loaded them on big barges and they went out in the ocean, which they thought was so big it could never ever possibly affect something as big as the ocean, and they just dumped all the garbage into the ocean. Well, if we're interested in seeing what we didn't see before, we're beginning to learn that there's no ocean big enough to have the consequences of our garbage not affect life everywhere on the planet. Everywhere on the planet. And I think it comes to me too because whatever else this pandemic has taught us, whatever enlightenment, whatever epiphany we have had, maybe it's about a scary level of our vulnerability. I think there's been a piece of that for me. I live, unlike other generations, in a kind of false sense of invulnerable. I have an enormous confidence about I'm safe. I don't live in a jungle that has tigers roaming in it. I live my life without having to worry too much about my safety. I can go on to higher order things. I can have fun. I can play. I can create, share in conversations, and eat food, and all these things that we do without too much worry about our safety. But the arrival of the pandemic was an epiphany for me. Its presence is an epiphany. Its new integration in this new higher contagious version is another epiphany for me. And then I heard one of the infectious disease experts say the COVID-19 is just an early warning for what will one day be the big one. What? What? And what he's talking about is that as deadly as the coronavirus is, even right now, it's not like what it could be. Because it's somewhat deadly. The percentages are dangerous and frightening. I've had family members that have died from it. But again, I'm just going to quote the expert. It's not the big one. So the epiphanies can sometimes make you feel better. You go, oh, I didn't realize that. I didn't know. That's exciting. That's good news. But epiphanies also reveal to you sometimes things that maybe you didn't want to know. And sometimes they can stir up fears. I talk all the time, I name all the time that every time an angel appears in Scripture is an epiphany. That's why we have bright lights and the sense of the sound of angels singing. It's an epiphany. An aha moment is coming. But the response of us oftentimes is fear. And the angels always say, do not be afraid. So in this epiphany of COVID-19, in the season of epiphany, I heard someone say earlier today, actually I read someone's writing, and they said that what they had learned from COVID-19 is that I can no longer pretend that my neighbor's health or condition of health is not my concern. Because in a pandemic, when your neighbor is sick and cannot get treatment and cannot get help, you can get sick from that neighbor. It's an aha moment. It's like my grandfather, who eventually stopped dumping things in the dump because at that time they used DDT to control flies in the barn, and DDT was very effective on flies. And flies are really an annoyance, really a big nuisance in dairy farming. And they're dirty. They contaminate the milk parlor. And so DDT sprays, insecticides to kill flies, were fabulous. They were just amazing. But what happened, two things happened. One is flies proved that they are genetically far superior to what we thought, because they reproduce so quickly, that mutations began to happen, and just as a freak of nature, a mutant fly would be hatched that DDT didn't affect. And then because that fly wasn't killed, then they would mate with other flies, and all of a sudden we had a super hybrid fly in the dairy business that was not affected by DDT. That happened in a relatively short period of time when I was a young person. But worse, what we found was that those empty containers of DDT insecticide that we were throwing over the ravine into the dump were getting into the water, and they were being consumed by all levels of wildlife. And one of the most impactful awarenesses was that the extinction of the American eagle, the near extinction of the American eagle, was directly the result of DDT getting into the water system, and then the eagles were drinking the contaminated water wherever they lived in the world. And what it did was it softened the shell of the eggs of the eagle. And so the eggs were laid and they never came. They were never viable. Wow. Wow. The interconnectedness, the interrelatedness of all of life, this, my friends, is epiphany. And of course, with epiphanies, you always have to decide, are you going to see it and accept it and then think about what changes need to happen because of it? Or are we just going to go, oh, it's too much information, I don't want to know it? Well, this week in the season of Epiphany, and in this season of the season of Epiphany, we are called upon in our Christian journey with God to look and to discover aha moments, things that will inspire us, or things that will, inspire us to change the way we live. Because that's the ongoing energy of a life with God, of our life with God, our life with each other. So my big epiphany for most of my life, my big epiphany is that it is a small world after all. It's a very small world. And my unwillingness to see the connections between garbage I have in my hand, or chemicals that I use in my hair, or food that I eat, my unwillingness to see how all that is interconnected and how the welfare of the world is in my hands. It's in our hands. It's not in just my hands. I do believe, my friends, that is one of the awarenesses that comes from the birth of Jesus and from the life of Jesus. Cain said on the discovery that God was walking in the garden, and God said that he heard the blood of Abel crying out from the ground. And so he asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" And Cain's response was, "Am I my brother's keeper? Am I my brother's keeper? God, really?" And one old seminary professor said, and from the beginning of time all the way back then, humanity has been saying, "Hell no, I'm not my brother's keeper." The implication from God's communication to Cain was, of course you are. Where is your brother? So my friends, I started late, went a little longer than normal, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps you to think about things that you might be needing to discover about yourself. I continue to offer to you, and some of you are taking advantage of it. Send me your thoughts, send me your questions, send me your responses and your thoughts about what we talk about here in this office It's your pastor's chat as well as mine. So let's continue to pray for new insights, shall we? And then for the courage and the wisdom to carry out what we learn. God bless you, my friends. I look forward to talking to you again tomorrow. Goodbye.